May I have your attention? Please welcome Sheena Allen, CEO and founder, Capway, Meta Agarwal, partner, Redpoint, Tomas Campos, CEO and co-founder of Spinwheel, and Roxanne Petraeus, CEO and co-founder, Athena.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for being here. Today, we're going to spend some time talking about diversity in startups. So maybe to just start off with, I'll introduce myself and then let everyone else here introduce themselves. I'm Meta Agarwal. I'm a partner at Redpoint. I focus on early stage investing, primarily in fintech and consumer. Redpoint, more broadly, we're a multi-stage fund investing at the early and growth stages across fintech, healthcare, consumer, enterprise, et cetera. And I've been in venture and at Redpoint for 6 years, and before venture, I was actually a founder. I started 2 companies, both based in New York. So Sheena, maybe I'll turn it over to you.
Yes, hello. I'm Sheena Allen, founder and CEO of Capway. We are a fintech startup. We focus on building a financial hub of products and services all around creating financial access and opportunities.
I'm Tomas Campos. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Spinwheel. At Spinwheel, we're focused on improving financial outcomes through consumer debt. So we provide all the APIs and the no-code drop-in modules to make it easy to be able to connect, optimize, pay, and finance consumer debt, helping people save and make money.
And I'm Roxanne Petraeus, co-founder and CEO of Athena, and we're a modern compliance training platform. I was explaining it to these folks, and they both, their eyes rolled over when I said compliance, and we explained it to founders as compliance training that doesn't suck. So yeah, that's what we do.
Awesome. Well, maybe to start off with, a question that I've had that I'm really curious to get everyone's take on, and Roxanne, maybe we'll start with you, is how have you thought about investors in constructing your cap table to reflect kind of, broader society and tech?
Yeah, totally. I think that from our earliest days, so it's myself and my co-founder, and we really, we're an all-women founded team, and every year that really depressing stat comes out that it's between 2 and 3% of venture capital goes to teams that look like us. And so we thought it was really important for us to try to get a cap table that at least reflected ourselves and the team that we were building. And I think that the key takeaway that we had is if you're intentional about it, and in the same way that you build your business with metrics and goals and kind of follow through with them, your cap table can look more diverse while still reflecting the reality that it's just not a terribly diverse place. So for example, I'm an Army veteran, and so it was important for me to have some veterans on the cap table just because there's not a ton of us in tech. And we worked with some great organizations, like everything from operator collectives. I think they do an incredible job with people of color and women, bringing them into venture, and just brought in angel investors. And I think maybe one other kind of learning I had is that if you really open up your cap table to a broader group using angel investors and a roll-up vehicle, it's much more possible to get that diversity. I think we had something like 40% of our investors in our Series B were people of color and women. And the way we were able to do that was just really try to look for angel investors, great operators who maybe aren't this might be their first or second check, but to us that was really exciting.
Awesome. Can I ask you a follow-up question?
Totally.
Which is, did those folks come to you, or did you have to make a concerted effort to?
Oh man, this is such a good one. I had this woman tell me, she's like, all my mediocre male MBA friends get asked to angel invest, and no one asked me to angel invest. And I was like, that's so interesting. And I realized even myself, I had this kind of unconscious bias that I would feel a little bit uncomfortable asking women to invest because I felt like I was taking money from them, and I had to kind of flip it and be like, I'm giving them an opportunity to make a lot of money. And so to your point, I had to be intentional about it and actually go ask folks, because I did find that, while not universally true, I would say that women, for example, were not forcing their way onto our cap table. They weren't doing some of the things that, again, and I'm speaking in really broad terms, but they weren't doing some of the things that men investors would do of let me talk to you about how much value I'm going to add and you really need me. That wasn't the dynamic. And so we needed to be a little bit more persistent and say, we would love for you to join. We got rid of a minimum check size, things like that, to just kind of flip that narrative a little bit.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Sheena, Tomas, did you guys have a similar experience? I'm curious to hear.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think I totally agree on the being intentional when you approach like angel investors. The other thing I would add to that is when we were, targeting our outreach for our first, term sheets and our first money in from professional money, we were really focused on kind of creating a matrix of, hey, here's the top VCs we would love to invest in our company. And as part of that, it was, hey, what are the ones that actually have values that are important to us, including, diversity and inclusion, because we really value that as part of our company. And so I think taking that intentionality all the way from like your angels all the way through like the professional VC money that's going to come in was really important for us as well.
And how did you evaluate that?
It was tough. I think some of it was, one, how do they present themselves? But then when we talked to them, really understanding. I remember asking one of our first VCs, I said, how important are these values to you? And his answer was like, it's everything. It's everything that this is about. And to me, that's what really mattered. And so it was a combination of, hey, what are they putting out there? But then when you engage with them and really talk to them, does that come through? Is that something that's really important for them?
Awesome.
Yeah, similar. When we first started raising super early, we definitely looked for diverse investors and people who, when they said they was investing in diversity or especially like Black women, they were doing it because they was actually passionate about it, not because they wanted to check a box. Mm-hmm. So that was super, super important. So one of our very first investors was Arlen Hamilton from Backstage Capital. And Arlen, her portfolio reflects what she says. So she was one of our first investors, but we have everybody on our cap table for the most part, they're on our cap table because they either understand what we're doing, which is making an impact, but also making money, and or they were actually serious about their diversity efforts, and it wasn't to check a box.
I was going to say the thing that came out for me of hearing each of you speak is the authenticity behind it. I personally think that's so important. Being on the other side, I've heard people say things like, oh, we only want a female board member, and so that's why we're talking to you, or do you want to meet this company? They do femtech. And so, my reaction is, well, you should want the best board member, and like the best board member could be like a woman or someone of color or whatever, but filtering for only that feels like you're checking a box, potentially. So I think that's what really shone through in your answers. Maybe we can move on to a slightly different topic, and Sheena, maybe I'll start with you, which is I think there's been a lot of conversation about hiring a diverse team and the impact that a diverse team has on positive outcomes and success. I think something that we haven't spent as much time talking about is how do you create a very open and equal culture where everyone has an equal seat at the table, feels comfortable, and maybe where you kind of work towards counteracting biases that people maybe aren't as conscious about. I'd love to hear a little bit about how you've thought about what you're doing internally at your company.
Yeah, I want to build a team that we all understood the mission and we were all focused on like getting to the goal that we're working towards, but everybody could bring a different experience to the table. So an example, like even for my engineers, we have one engineer who's been, before he came to Capway, 25 years at Bank of America. But then we also have engineers who have never been in fintech, but they might be a senior developer. So it was some white, Black, young, old, people who have come from low-income backgrounds, people who have come from, more middle class. I wanted to build a team where everybody could bring an experience to the table, because the whole point of Capway is, once again, building financial access opportunities for everyone. And the reason we did that, because a lot of times in finance, you might go somewhere else and you don't get the same opportunity that maybe somebody else who doesn't look like you will get, for whatever the reason may be. And so to build a diverse team where we brought all those different experiences to one table with one mission, that's what I look for when I'm looking to build my team.
I was going to say, hearing you say that makes complete sense. And for us, it was very similar when, when we built the company. It was so important for us to hire people who understood the problem we're trying to solve. And consumer debt cuts across so many different types of people and have different experiences with it. And so it was so important for us to make sure that we could have people in the company that really understood it and lived it. And the only way to do that was to have that sort of diversity across various backgrounds and experiences. And we were very deliberate about when we first hired the first 2 people, 3 people, it was all about that and making sure that we could really drive those types of perspectives in the company that would help us succeed.
What about from a like culture setting, meetings, norms? Like, are there certain things you do in kind of the operating of the company to try and ensure people of different ages or backgrounds or have kind of an equal seat at the table?
I mean, we do like floating holidays or things like that, so that we make sure that just because everybody doesn't celebrate Christmas, and respectfully, it's okay if you don't celebrate Christmas. So, we do the things like floating holidays. We have like mental health days. So we just try to make sure that everybody's comfortable and they're respecting everybody's belief. We have people on our team where their pronouns are they, them, and we educate everybody on the team to say, hey, respectfully, it's not he, it's not she, it's they, them, and then we have a conversation about why it's that way and being respectful to address, that person however they would like to be for whatever reason. So we talk to each other. We're very open. Communication is really big for us, but it's also being, once again, very respectful of people's choices.
I love that example of floating holidays. That's something that our head of people kind of implemented, and I think it's like one of a bunch of little things that companies can do to not just kind of say like, we really want you here, but sort of walk the walk and be incredibly intentional about it. I think another thing that we found is just asking for feedback and having a bunch of different ways that employees can tell us kind of where we're getting it right and where we're messing up. Because inevitably, like, you're going to mess up. It's actually something one of the trainings we offer is sexual harassment prevention training, and the point is that often people will make unintentional, comments or things like that in meetings, perhaps speak over people. And so a lot of our training focuses on accept that as an inevitability and instead build mechanisms where people can provide feedback, explain why that wasn't okay, et cetera. So we've really tried to do that within the company, and it looks like asking employees in a million different ways how they feel about something, whether that's surveys, whether that's like open office hours for a head of people to just hear like, hey, did we look over something? I was the first employee on my team to take maternity leave, for example. So like, not surprisingly, we didn't have a great policy. We didn't have a bunch of processes. And so we just kind of learn as we go and are really okay about making mistakes because it's just inevitable. But the point is to learn from them.
Have you guys found any tools to be like particularly helpful in kind of furthering these goals? I feel like I've met a wide variety of tools, everything from people who track the amount of time people are spent talking in a meeting to like survey tools and pulse checks and the like. Are there any that stand out for you guys?
I mean, this is a shameless plug, but our company literally does DEI and harassment prevention training, and so we do it digestible over time, so we've certainly done those and then had conversations about them and really trained managers. I think that's another, like, our company is now 70, I'm not sure how large each of yours are, but at that stage, no matter how much, for example, senior leadership is bought in. We're not in every meeting, we're not everywhere. And so we've rolled out like internal manager trainings, just making sure there's a bunch of different ways people can kind of understand what do the right thing looks like at our company. But yeah, not sure if any of that resonates.
I was going to say, we really basic tools, but we use Slack. We're a completely remote team. But things like poll bots or other things like that just sort of drive that engagement, ask questions, keep folks engaged on specific topics, including like our culture. We found that to be pretty useful.
Awesome. Maybe we can start talking about, we've kind of hit this topic of diversity can take many different forms. Maybe we can spend some time about like breaking into tech or even becoming a founder and how you thought about and any advice or learnings that you've had about breaking into tech or becoming a founder and addressing some of the different points of diversity that each of you maybe have or that you've seen other people do successfully. Tomas, maybe we can start with you.
Yeah, so I'll just tell an interesting story. I think that'll help shape this. So I actually, early in my career, had a manager, and he probably needs to take your training, but I had a manager who, he asked me to take a personality test. And based on the personality test, he was like, oh, you know what? You're never gonna make it to like upper management. You're never gonna get you're sort of slated for middle management. And I was like, that's weird. And I remember, and this is the same person. He actually asked me one time to like mow his lawn, which is really like far off the field. But the reason why I say this is because I think in order to break in and do that, you really have to believe in yourself, and you can't take any of those things that come your way that people are going to tell you you're not going to make it. The number of times you're going to be told that your business is not going to succeed, or you have a bad idea, or you're not going to be able to go and achieve your vision. You're going to hear that a lot. And so I think being able to have that belief in yourself, but also having that perspective and that aperture to say like, hey, what's the bigger thing I'm trying to solve here? How do I get to that goal? And so for me, I think that was one of the key things in my experience. I'd also say the other thing is our second hire in the company was for an engineer, and he had never been an engineer before. And it was one of those things where we talked to people about it, they said, how could the second hire in your company for an engineering role never have had any engineering experience? But what we valued was that he had the drive. He had invested 18 months of his life studying and taking classes on engineering. He had a perspective. He was passionate about what we were trying to do. And we said, listen, we can invest in someone like that. And as long as you have the ability to grow, and as long as you have that desire to really get into this space, we're willing to give that opportunity, because I was given those opportunities a lot coming up in my career. And those are the things that are super valuable. So we want to give that back. And I think that's, when I think about people who want to break in or be a founder, create your own opportunities, but then also take them when they're given to you and really try and go after them.
That's a wild story.
Yeah, wow. Yeah. Definitely needs some training.
So upsetting, yeah.
Yeah.
I think we talked in the kind of prep, like there's a bunch of, I think there's this concept in tech of like a known quantity. And so that is going to tend to look like someone has a really tech pedigreed background, just like checks a bunch of boxes. And I definitely learned as I was, for example, fundraising, that like things that I didn't understand would sort of break that mold, or there wasn't a paradigm. For example, like I was spent most of my career in the Army, and that has nothing to do with tech. And so I kind of started to realize that some investors were maybe like not understanding why I would be good at certain skills. And so now when I advise founders who are coming, who are trying to break into tech, the advice I give might sound a little depressing, but I advise them to actually understand where they don't fit the mold, and then just like think about how they're going to counter that in pitches or things like that. So for example, like again, I was a mom, I was a veteran, like all of these things. And so I just found that I had to be really clear about explaining my ambition, explaining how hard I worked, things that I don't feel like I should have had to explain, but I would have investors sometimes say, why do you want to do a venture-backed business? You could make this a great lifestyle business. And I would explain like, when I do something, if I'm in the Army, I'm in special operations. If I'm going to do this, I'm going to do it intensely. And I don't know why you're asking me why, whether I'm ambitious, but now I've just realized I need to really connect the dots for them in a way that perhaps a founder who just was X Stripe and X this and X that wouldn't have to do. But I do advise founders to do it, because I think otherwise it just does work against you.
Yeah, so I started my first tech company actually in college. So born and raised in Mississippi, nothing to do with tech in any way. Started my first tech company in college. When I graduated, told my parents I wanted to be a tech entrepreneur. Which did not go over too well, to be quite honest. And I came into this space talking about breaking into tech and diversity. I broke into the world of technology completely green. I had no clue what should or shouldn't be done, what was right, what was wrong, what was going against me, because I knew nothing about tech prior to any of this. So I actually moved out to San Jose fresh from college, and fresh against my parents' wishes. And I realized that no one looked like me for the most part. So I came in completely green, and then once I got more into tech, and especially once I got to my second startup, my first startup was bootstrap, my second startup was venture-backed, I realized for the most part I had 3 strikes against me. I was Southern, so my country accent that does not leave me no matter where I move to. I was a black and I was female, and of course black females raise less than 1% of VC funding. So I went in green. I learned my lessons as time went on, but similar to that, I have this thing that everything you're not makes you everything you are. So that's kind of how I broke into it, and that's kind of my motto of going through it all.
I mean, all 3 of your stories are really inspiring. I'm curious, and I can think of some examples in my life, but I think yours are probably more interesting, of good advice you got that you either took to heart or didn't. Maybe it will be helpful to some people in the audience.
I'll start. My mentor, my very first real mentor, as I call him, Austin, Texas. When I moved to Austin, he told me to stop pitching like a girl, and it wasn't in a negative or derogatory way. It was just saying he was a white male, and he said when white men come and pitch to me, they pitch to me like I need them, not they need not that I need. They pitch to me like I need them, not they need me. And he said when you pitch to me, you pitch to me like you need me. Like pitch to me like you have the best thing out there and that I'm lucky to invest in your company. So that's probably one of the best things I learned.
The one thing that stands out to me in this moment is I had a CEO I had a chance to work for, and he really instilled that having that personal accountability was super important, and I take that sort of accountability to hold myself accountable to like the objectives and the visions and things I want to do, and it's just a great way to just motivate myself and keep myself sort of going when you have a lot of things that are not going your way. But I think that's one of the things that really has inspired me and stuck with me.
I got quite similar advice about kind of pitching, and one of our investors said, like, you guys do what you say you're going to do, and we're like, yeah. They're like, that's bad. You're like under-promising and over-delivering, and the problem is like the pitch is where you need to paint the really big vision, and instead of being incredibly methodical, my co-founder is an engineer. She kind of thinks very linear, and as do I, and so I sort of got this advice from Hunter Walk and others about like really pitch the vision, not just your like laser focused operational abilities, because those make me a great operator, but they don't actually make me a great fundraiser because I'm not doing the like I'm going to change the world and like tech for voice and like that kind of thing, and that can be disadvantageous in fundraising.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, I think we might be out of time, but I feel like I could talk to you guys all day about this. So thank you so much for your time and for sharing your story.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Thank you.